Hey folks, and welcome to Caterham Valley for today's walk and talk. I'm starting in Beechwood Gardens. I'm going to make my way along Croydon Road. As usual, I'll be telling the story as I go, pointing out some of the sites that have been there for many years, and generally sharing the history of how Caterham grew up. Now, opposite is Valley Court, and that was the site of Caterham Cottage Hospital. There were actually two hospitals here. One was opened in 1875 by William Soper, and that survived until 1902-03. There were 10 beds, and then in 1903 a larger hospital was built, always on the same plot of land here, and that survived until 1986, and there were 16 beds there. Demolished in 87, and Valley Court here was built. So this is a great starting point to then make our way down to Croydon Road and head along the valley. I don't believe there's a huge amount of age to this particular parade of shops. The Lost Sheep is a great shop, brilliant gifts, nice tea room downstairs. Next to it there was a post office originally, according to a 1940s, 1950s map. And I've also referred back to a map from about 1900. And also an excellent book by the Bourne Society, all about the history of Caterham shops. First example of the old and new there, so older properties there, 174, and then new alongside, and Victorian properties here, 3-storey. And this will very much be the pattern for large parts of this walk. We've got here, this was Leslie House 1893, having a bit of work done at the moment. Coburg Villa, quite old but with some renovation. And the signs are here as well on this property, so the Victorian style windows there and a little archway above the door. And an older set of properties here. The Dell. And an older building through there into the valley. And an example here of where we've seen some more modern development over what was there before. I will drop in the maps every now and then so that you can see I'm here, Caterham Place now. Actually, we've got a Bourne Society pack here. Let's go and have a look at this. Richard Caterham, 1862 to 1928, distinguished British naturalist, author and pioneer wildlife photographer, lived on this site 1906 to 1928. No doubt in one of the properties that is only really visible on one of the older maps. Just up there on the left is Caterham Baptist Church. Let's cross over as it's clear. Beechwood Road and the old school building, which has been developed. There's some residential accommodation there now, but they still kept the shell of the building, which is nice. And we've got Caterham Baptist Church straight ahead of me, formerly known as the Ebenezer Strict Baptist Chapel. There's a full history on the website for the Baptist Church. Over the road here, sort of opposite the school, were builders' yards and depots and all sorts, but now we've just got stable court flats. I'm assuming they were built in the 60s. Florence Court straight ahead, that's got some age as well, going back to Victorian times. Here we've got a kind of a blending of old into new. They've kept some of the design pointers there, which is nice. Dunwoody's Builders Merchants. Again, the old map just says depot behind. It was a bit of a catch-all term. Lots of sloping gardens in properties in Caterham. Lawnmower challenges. Now, opposite number 110, which is about where I am now, there used to be some garages and a Kingdom Hall for Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't know when that went. These properties built 70s, 80s, I'm guessing by the style. but that used to occupy that piece of land. So 98 and 96, these two properties were the location of the Methodist Church, and then an older building on a 1900s map next to it, which will be this one. This is Caterham Christian Centre, and this was originally known as Caterham Valley Hall, non-sectarian. Next to it, some very old buildings, so 1850 for numbers 82, 80 and 78, these three here, and have housed things like Greengrossers, K-Tax, turf accountants. And these two, the 80 and 78, were originally built as houses. This was once J.A. Lash and Sons newsagents, and you can just see that we've got some evidence of the sign there, painted on the side. It looks like the whole sign is actually there, as much as one can tell. But nice that there's still that link to the past. Directly opposite is where the Commonwealth Pub was. So that was built in 1872, the Commonwealth. It was the fountain and the valley, and behind it there used to be a library. Now we're entering the main shopping area. I'm just highlighting opposite me here, so there was a Salvation Army Hall on the left, and then where Supreme Care Services is, 72, there were various greengrocers and Bubbles children's clothing, and then we had things like an ironmonger's and a dairy. Perry's was over here, and just where we got Domino's now. And this is the most recent development, and this was the site of Rose and Young garages. It was a Caterham Motor Company in 1922, Rose and Young 1970. In 1994 they moved to Red Hill, and eventually it was demolished and rebuilt. I believe there may be a Lidl here at some point. So we've got a relatively new set of shops here, originally housing butchers and a restaurant, and Dewhurst, Tesco, cleaners, grocers. Quite a mixture. But that, by comparison with some of the other areas, this is a more modern structure, as you can see. And then just looking back on some of those older ones there, and you can actually tell by the windows above Domino's on the corner there, they're sort of Victorian style windows. Yes, I recommend the purchase of the book, because if you've got any interest in the history, it will give you the depth. And you can see all occupiers of these buildings going back many moons indeed. Almost without knowing what it was, you can tell what it was. And to make myself clear, that was the site of a Woolworths from 1931. Cross over, avoiding residue from the summer of 2024. Now, something took my eye, and that was this tile work, because I think this was a fairly standard part of the Woolworths design, as possibly the flooring was. Obviously some changes have been made to it, and then it would have had the sign across the top there. Still miss Woolworths. And we see lots of chopping and changing here. Some of the businesses again have been there for maybe 20 years or so, but there were changes happening then, and we've had COVID. Our shopping patterns have changed now. I'm going to look back over at, this is Quadrant House. It was Hill House or Hill House Hammond Group, and this was built in the 1960s, 70s time. There was originally a cinema on this plot, the Florida Cinema, and there have been so many changes of buildings over the years that I'm going to have to defer once again to the book to get a full history, if there's any that you may remember from here. Now, I'm going to stop briefly here at number 20. This was Hewitt Greengrocers, and I plan to do a separate video on the history of this business and the family. because it's got a very strong connection to me. They're doing some works at the moment, and as you can see, there's a bit of disruption. I chose a Sunday to film this because it's just that bit easier. Some of these shops were built a little bit later. We've got the mock Tudor style, which we see a lot on the premises above shops. So sort of later into the 1930s, that kind of thing. One of the more recent changes was the bank on the corner. That NatWest closed down a little while back. Many banks have. William Garland Pub. Pubs struggled a lot in recent times. Have to put on various things to try and attract and keep the business. I'm just going to show a little bit of a pan for what's going to come in a follow-up video where we see some of the other parts of Caterham. Just give you a visual, a teaser. Yes, they're doing some night work here at the moment, redirecting the traffic when they do so. So we await what this will be. And looking back on the pub, and then we've got the Rawlings going into Euronics, and the oldest part of Caterham that was open as retail premises. I'll just highlight again, so newer and then older. Got some really nice design features above the Pizza Express and Casa Lola. And again, we've got detail over the road and a full view, top to bottom, of former Greengrossers. I know you can use Google Street View and the Apple Maps equivalent. This is an alternative to having a look at areas that you may know. But it really is a mixed history, you know. It's almost no two buildings are the same. This was the Rose and Young site. And as I say, I believe that's going to be retail on the ground floor there. Train at the station, at Caterham Station, just down there. And a nice little symmetrical view there where we've got Thai cuisine in the middle. I know that the Indian takeaway on the right hand side was still around 20 years ago when the book I referred to was being published. I figure by giving you various options for the visual, it might help you to make some personal connections with the area that you may know. And again, Domino's building with a lot of history there. Victorian properties all the way up. I'm stopping here because it's something that I hadn't picked out before. That the names of the houses here: Elstead, Eastergate, Kenwyn, Kingsgate. Beautiful houses, really beautiful. Interested on the namings, the connection. Probably one of those things where someone will either go immediately to it or will maybe never know. More nice property there. I'm giving you a second chance at some of these because I wanted to make sure I captured everything. And then we got a nice view of the school building that was. I did an evening class there in the 1990s. I passed. whatever I was learning, I seem to recall. Quite nice there. Blue sky today. Not sure for how long. I've got a question to ask you. On the map it refers to shelter opposite the parade of shops. Now, I know that's a bus shelter, and that's exactly what it could be referring to. Look, there's even a bus come in just on time, the 434. But was it also an air raid shelter in this location? This is all fairly new because that's Valley Court behind there where the old cottage hospital was. Lost Sheep parade of shops. Looking back to where I've just been. Bus shelter, but was there another shelter there? Thank you for coming along with me. That was my first exploration of Caterham Valley, having previously done a film at Caterham on the Hill. There will be a revisit to pick up the other parts of the valley and to do the special on the Hewitts. Please consider subscribing if you haven't done already. Look after yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.